Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 295. The preseason for Tottenham Hotspur is underway. They are down under right now as we speak. It is Monday, the 27th of July. I've got Scott alongside. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's up, my friend?
Just enjoying Tottenham being back. It was weird to watch football that wasn't international football. As I sat down and enjoyed these two friendlies, or what I was able to enjoy of these two friendlies. There was some technical difficulties for me in the first half of the MK Dons friendly, and then the Auckland friendly was a little late, and so I caught the first half of that one. But yeah, it was nice to watch the first split.
Todd is also here. He is at TC_Kasho. TC, what's up, man?
What's up, sir? Any day you can talk about another Tottenham Hotspur season. It's a good fucking day. And we started it off preseason-wise with a win, so that's never terrible.
Yeah, a couple of them, in fact. As Scott mentioned, MK Dons last week, behind closed door friendly, but you could watch it if you have Spurs play. They win that one 1-0, an early banger of a goal from Matthijs van Ange, which came kind of out of nowhere. And then 2-0 over Auckland down in New Zealand. Spurs have already done the New Zealand portion of their trip and have already moved on to Sydney, Australia, where they will play twice this week, once against Sydney FC and once against Chelsea, which is just, I still cannot understand that for a preseason match, but that's the way they do it. Gentlemen, I want to talk about this preseason for Tottenham Hotspur because I think the most glaring news coming out of it last week was who was going to make the trip. TC, you and I talked about this quite a bit. Who's going to be on the plane, who's not going to be on the plane, and we obviously got our answer. I think the names that stand out from an injury standpoint that we probably knew were not going to be traveling: Mohamed Kudus, Xavi Simons, Dejan Kulusevski, Wilson Odobert. These are the types of names that we knew probably were not going to be traveling. They're still rehabbing those injuries. Guglielmo Vicario also has a knock and also is probably not going to be here for much longer, so he also did not make the trip. But two names I think stood out for me, Todd: Rodrigo Bentancur and Pape Sarr, who were both back already from World Cup duty. We saw plenty of people who were on World Cup duty, including the Netherlands boys, Van de Ven and Van Hecke. We saw those names going on the trip, but we saw Bentancur and Sarr staying back. And kind of just the reason given was they wanted some more time, and it was granted. I don't know if there's anything else to read into that. We can certainly dive into that right now, but what was your thought on those two names specifically? Because I think those are the ones that certainly raised the most eyebrows.
Yeah, I know that Bentancur asked for a little bit more time, as though that would be the some sort of physical benefit to him. Sarr has some personal stuff going on, is the way that I've heard it described by multiple different sources. And to be fair, man, Sarr's had some personal stuff going on for like the last year.
Yeah,
like it's been tough for that guy. And on a human level, we know he's lost some people close to him, and he's had some personal things going on. On a footballing level, though, man, like that, it's probably about time that we show that particular gentleman the door. No?
Yeah, it feels like it's something that's going to happen, whether, by hook or by crook. And I mean, you mentioned the personal problem. I mean, that was direct from Roberto De Zerbi's mouth. I mean, he said Sarr has a personal problem. He asked for another week more, but there's no problem. He said both of these guys, like, they're both. He actually said they were both crucial players for the club, which I don't know if that's just coach speak, but that's the way he phrased it.
If I'm trying to move two pieces in the window, or one of those two pieces in the window, I'm going to say that both of them are critical as to not devalue the one that I actually want to sell.
So, Scott, you bring up Lucas Bergvall, which is another name on the plane, unlike these other two. But Bergvall's obviously had a lot of speculation around his name this summer as a want away, but I think the club would prefer to keep him. And until a club matches the number that they're asking for, I think he will stay put. De Zerbi's quotes about Bergvall and kind of turned into a comment about players who would want out regardless. It wasn't specifically directed at Bergvall, but look, that's what the question was about. So he basically just said, I think, kind of the line that any coach would say and any fan would want to hear any coach say, which is anyone who doesn't want to be here, who isn't happy, who isn't proud to play for the badge has to go. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. It's just a matter of having the conversation with the player, which is something that De Zerbi has said is going to be happening this week while the team is on this preseason trip. And I think that decisions are going to be made this week, because let's be really, really honest. We got less than 4 weeks until the first real match of the season. These decisions are going to have to start coming, not just with Bergvall, but with the likes of players I've already talked about. Vicario, we know Romero's out there. There's a lot of players that we think are going to or need to be sold that haven't been yet. And as time kind of dwindles here, TC, I do think we're going to start to see that stuff happen. But on Bergvall specifically, that's not anything that a coach shouldn't or wouldn't say, right?
Well, I think it's De Zerbi drawing a clear line in the sand to Bergvall or his representation, whoever the fuck, and saying, you can't say those things if you want to get game time under me. You can't, you're either here or you're not. And if you don't want to be here or you think you'd be better someplace else, go kick rocks. That's essentially what he's saying. And what a lot of people don't think about is they're like, Bergvall, he's so young. He's such a young talent and all of this. He's only a year younger than Mateus Fernandes. So, you're looking at it going, where are you going to get to? It's not like Fernandes is going to get worse over time, barring injury, right? And Bergvall's going to, assume that role. As we've talked about ad nauseum here, he's not the first or second guy off the bench on the midfield, and that's a really tough place to be when you're looking at guys younger and better than you in front. So my hope is at this stage that he leaves and we make the money. But it has to be for the right number, which is 50 million.
And I think that the club is standing firm on that, and that's what they should do, because they have I hate couching it in these terms, obviously, but they have the power here. They have the player under a contract, and that's just kind of the way it goes. And they would really like to keep the player around to have him trigger that homegrown status. He's been here as a young player for so many years now. You need it to continue if you want that. And if he wants away, I agree with you. Find a deal. But until you can find a deal, he's a Tottenham Hotspur player. That's kind of just the way that it has to be. These matches both saw a pretty decent amount of youth, especially the Auckland match. It was a very, very young starting lineup, kind of led by Archie Gray in the middle. I did want to point out, I watched this entire match on Saturday. I had no life and was home on Saturday night, and it was on at 8 p.m. Pacific was the kickoff for this match in New Zealand, and I was locked in. I don't know what got into me. I'm not a preseason watcher. I'm not a this game doesn't count watcher very often, but I was in and kind of enjoyed watching this collection of mostly youngish players outside of Brandon Austin and Manor Solomon. I think everyone was 23 or younger on the field to start the game. So it was exciting. I did want to point out there was one player that really stood out to me, other than a player I know from the midfield that you want to talk about in Luca Williams-Barnett, but I forgot about Kota Takai, and he had a really nice presence on the ball at the center back spot. I don't know if he's sticking around. He feels like another one of those players that might be victim of the Johan Lange brought this guy in and now we got to get rid of him syndrome that this club has seemed to adopt this summer. But I think I saw a little something there. Granted, it's a half plus of a preseason match in New Zealand, but I was like, oh, he actually has a little bit of presence on the ball and a little bit of size to him as well, which I liked.
I was going to say, there's the old famous adage in America, you can't coach size, right? And that kid is a fucking unit. He is massive. So, but you also remember he's a Japanese full international. He's a guy that was J League team of the season the year that he was there. This kid has talent. There's ability there. It's just when he came to Spurs, he was hurt and then immediately got hurt a different way and then went to loan at Mönchengladbach. Now,
a meaningless loan where he didn't do anything.
He was awful. if we're being 100% about it. I don't know if it was the system. I don't know what it was, but there were multiple videos of him getting just absolutely taken to the cleaners in the Bundesliga, which is not great news. My hope is that they'll send him on loan in England. I'd love to see him at a championship side. I'd love to see him get his ass kicked properly for a year and learn how to play the English game because he's a big guy. And if he learns how to use his size properly, I think he could have a fine career in England.
I know you wanted to touch on Luka Williams-Barnett too. Like he's obviously a player that's made some headlines and played really well in the closed door friendly last week as well, and has gotten his name in the manager's mouth even over this first week of preseason.
I do, and I want to come on to him because I know Scott's going to have some opinions. But a couple of other names that I wanted to shout out before we get on to Luka, Andrew. I thought Archie Gray with the armband had a very solid performance. I thought he played his ass off. I thought he asserted himself extremely well. I know you have some De Zerbi quotes on him that we can come on to, but he showed poise and presence way beyond his years. And I think where De Zerbi has him playing, right, as that kind of defensive midfielder role sitting in front of the two center backs, I think is going to help folks like Bentancur and Sarr find the exit maybe sooner rather than later. Jamie Donnelly's doing everything that he can to make this team, and I fucking love it. I love myself some Jamie Donnelly, and I hope he absolutely figures out a way to deputize for the Conor Gallagher style number 10 that De Zerbi likes to play right now. It just the fuck shit up number 10. I'm high press, and I can create when I turn you over, because that's essentially what Jamie Donnelly is doing for us right now, and I really like it. Finally, you mentioned him, and he was good in the Auckland game, but in a cameo appearance, he was silky smooth in the NK Dons match, and that's Luka Williams-Barnett. He's young, obviously extremely young, but he's starting to grow into his man body, which is awesome. He's had a growth spurt, and he's starting to fill out a little bit. And his on the ball skills are level with James Madison right now, and James Madison is the most technically skillful player we have on the team.
Dude, Luka Williams-Barnett is,
so
yeah, what do we call him? LWB, which in group chats I was very confused, and I thought people were talking about left wing back for a second, and then it all finally hit me who was being discussed. But when it comes to our academy, and I've said this before, I'll stop for a second. I think with Spurs, we get very excited about the youth. And I think we've historically done that because we don't bring anyone in. And we've been very poor in terms of incoming. And so our like coping mechanism as Spurs fans is to get really hyped up about the youth, right? But those days are done, at least seemingly so. And I bring that up to say that I think when I look at our academy, I look at Luka Williams-Barnett, I look at Mikey Moore, I look at Janai Byfield, and I don't really look any further than that. And that's okay. I think, the best clubs in England are going to develop a couple players like this, and then they're going to make money off everyone else. And that's what you need to do, right? If you can sell 5 or 6 guys to buy one first team player, you've done your job, right? And we're seeing us start to do that with the sale of Lancashire and the likes, right? But I look at Luka Williams-Barnett, I look at Mikey Moore, I look at Janai Byfield. I don't really look any further than that. But Williams-Barnett might be the cream of the crop. Jury's still out on Mikey Moore, right? He's young. He had an awesome season in Scotland, and I think this is a big year for him. But Williams-Barnett, I think, is the real deal. And it's really interesting. We talk about Archie Gray, and it ties into this because when we played in that 3 with Archie Gray kind of as the base, as a single pivot, you would say, right, with the 2 attacking midfielders or 2 dual hybrid attackers, whatever you want to call it in the midfield. When you play a midfield 3, it's all designed to progress through that midfield 3 slowly, fast, whatever you want to do, right? It doesn't really matter, but you progress through that midfield 3, then you push the ball wide to find 1v1 and isolations, right? That's a 4-3-3. We haven't seen that very often at Spurs, but if we can get into Savinho, when we get Kudus back, when we get Kulusevski back, if we get Kulusevski back, right? All these other names, these croupies that we're seeing, these guys are specialists, Kudus and Savinho especially in 1v1 isolations, right? So I start to wonder if we're going to start to see more of a 4-3-3 at times under De Zerbi, and I think he's not like tactically flexible like Frank, like we go into every week with a different game plan and adjust to our opponent, but he has flexibility when required. And I think Williams Barnett is young, right? But he does seem to be somebody who could play really effectively in a 4-3-3. So all this to say, he's the real deal. I don't think he's ready yet, but it's going to be interesting to see if he does start to peck at some minutes under Frank in a 4-3-3. Because I don't see him as a 10 right now. I don't see him as a winger by any means, right? But if we play a 4-3-3, I think there's room for Luka Williams Barnett to get minutes here and there. And that'd be really cool to see because he looks like he can do it.
Scott, he's not going to get minutes under Frank, and don't scare us like that again. It's De Zerbi now. It's not
Talk
Frank.
De Zerbi,
sorry.
The standard, the Evening Standard this week did report about not only LWB, as I don't think we can keep calling him because that sounds more cumbersome to me than Luka Williams Barnett, but Luka Williams Barnett, Janai Byfield, and Callum Olosesi were all mentioned as having a chance to compete for those first team minutes this season. Byfield and Olosesi are not on tour right now due to injury, but obviously Williams Barnett is, and we're getting to see some of that. And just to close the loop on the Will Lancashire thing, we did talk about that last week. He was in fact over this last week sold to Middlesbrough for 10 million with add-ons up to 20 million. And Spurs also get a 20% sell-on clause in this deal and matching rights for any future bids for a 21-year-old striker. So yeah, they are all of a sudden doing the business when it comes to those kinds of things.
And your boy is big sad about that departure. As you know, I was trumpeting this man as the next coming, and well, I don't know. He may come good, but people who know way more about football than I do say that he needs to go to Middlesbrough. So off he goes. I don't know, man. Again, going back to it, you can't coach size. And he's definitely growing into his man body. And the way that the striker position exists in the Premier League right now, it's just in the way that we've wanted for goals and finishers in the box, getting rid of that youth was hard to part with. However, dude, the contractual agreements that we're making right now with all of the caveats on them, this is incredible business, so I can't be mad at the club.
No, and again, this is the business that has to happen when you're trying to do what you're doing. Like this is we've said that phrase "long painful rebuild" multiple times. This is part of that. And
Lancashire is now 1 degree of separation removed from Greg Berhalter, so it's a good move for him too. He's gonna be sorry, that was a stupid joke, but he's gonna be hanging out with Berhalter's boy Sebastian Berhalter, who actually I think is a real talent, and I'm happy he got to move to Middlesbrough. But our boy Will Lancashire will be playing alongside Sebastian, so that's cool.
Just closing the loop from the De Zerbi quotes that I pulled, speaking about some of the other non-traveling players, he did say that Mohamed Kudus is very close, even saying that when the club is back in London next week, he should be available to start working. I would expect him to probably be ready for the start of the season. That is kind of what it sounds like. He says Kudus is obviously going to be a very important player. And then mentioned Kulusevski too. And obviously when we talk about Dejan Kulusevski at this point, the quotes are never going to be as positive as we want them to be. But he said we have to see in the next couple of weeks. He's another important player, but after a season without games, you've got to better analyze and not take risks for him and then for us. So that's another one where I just continue to kind of wait with bated breath for more of a definitive answer that I'm not 100% sure is going to be coming. When it comes to the rest of the summer, De Zerbi was also kind of very emphatic on the fact that the club is not done in the transfer market, despite what they've already accomplished, was really pointing to the attacking players needing forwards. So I think that's something that we have to look forward to as well. In addition to some of these names that we expect or even want to send out the Sars, the Bergvalls, the Vicarios, the Romeros of the world. When it comes to those players, we have that, and then we have the incomings of, hey, can we get us? The problem is that there's not really a good striker market out there right now, and I know everybody would like to replace both Richarlison and Solanke if given the chance, but I don't know that one or both or either is getting replaced outright this season. It just doesn't look that promising unless something big happens. Okay,
I disagree, and the reason why I disagree is because we're still very early in the window, and there's been names bantered about. I've heard of an improved bid for Krupi. I just saw that Njai from Everton is linked to Al Hilal for big money. And if that's the case, Richarlison, who just got his English citizenship, would love to go back to Everton, and they would love to have him back. I think that there are moves still on the table that I think that I'm excited to see completed. If we were to start the first day of the Premier League season with Tell and Solanke and Kudus, I think we're in trouble. I think if we start the season with Savinho, Krupi, and Kudus, I think we're in an. I think the amount of goals that will be added via the addition of those players takes us from like an 8th place team to a 4th place team.
Mind you, there are still like 2.5 weeks after the first game of the season before the window closes. So maybe not by the first game of the season, but you're saying by the end of the window at least.
Dude, and I'm saying by the first game of the season. Like, I think everybody is sick of waiting to the last day of the window and trying to squeeze out the best deals possible. And I'm sure we're still going to do a little bit of that because we're Tottenham fucking Hotspur. But at the end of the day, I think what De Zerbi has come to the table with is, these are my guys. This is what I'm doing. This is what I need. If you want me to compete and this is our only fucking competition, stop screwing around until the end of the window as you normally do and give me what I need. And they said, hey, here's 6 signings before the end of July. We're working on the other ones. We'll have them done before the beginning of the year.
But I'd even push back on you, Todd, there in saying that they're waiting. They haven't waited. They've actually gotten shit done, and I think that's what makes the forwards part of this conversation so interesting. Because I would say if you were going to leave it late on any position, it would be the attacking players. I'm fine with that. I don't want my defenders coming in late and trying to figure out the system. I'd rather it be my forwards who are just expected to go out there and score goals. But at the same time, I think they've gotten what they can do done to this point. I don't think they're hesitating on any deals or trying to squeeze the best price out of anyone. I think they've proven already this summer that they're not interested in doing that. They're just interested in making the best signings that they can in the moment and the best sales for that matter.
So I agree with everything that you said, with the exception of the fact that I think there has been some pushback on the price tag for both Savinho and for Krupi. And so negotiations on numbers that are less palatable take longer. And so we get that. And there's also some other options that exist, but I heard that Rafa Leal wants just bank robbing money on a weekly basis, and he doesn't press. And so he's going to go to Turkey from what I saw today. So, I mean, like, it's also got to be the right player fit. Like, Dusan Vlahovic is still without a team, but that's because he wanted like 12 million a year from Juventus, and they said no.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, maybe as the end of the window, he's one that I would love just to take a sneaky punt on because we don't have to pay a fee. I'd love to be able to just I don't know, toss 200 a week at him and ship Richarlison and Solanke, bring in him and Krupi and Savinho, and there, done. Let's go. Let's fucking rock and roll.
The problem is not even so much that there's no striker market or no market for the 9. It's like that position is like slowly becoming less and less of a thing, and it's it's causing teams to play different. Like sometimes this is me totally grasping at straws and just trying to find narratives, probably, right? But sometimes I wonder if we're even going to start to see more of a 4-3-3 because it requires less technical skill from your nine. Like you just throw like Tell at the nine and say, be around the penalty spot and clean stuff up and let these wingers find isolations and make things happen, right? So I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but I don't think that position is prevalent in the game at all. It's not even just the market itself right now. So it's kind of tricky. But I agree with Todd. If we start the season with Richarlison and Solanke as our two number nines, I think we're absolutely fucked. I don't think we can survive without that without the person we need at that position. And I don't know what that looks like. I also did read today that the club's priority is getting Savinho done, and then we move on to the nine, right? But City wants to find the replacement for Savinho, blah, blah, blah. We hear all kinds of shit, right? But I personally do think that uh, even though I just said we're fucked if we don't have a nine, I think getting that left wing position figured out is extremely important too. And I don't have an issue with the club prioritizing that over the nine if it has to be, one and then the other. Because go ahead.
I just think there's so much disrespect being thrown on Matisse Tell as well. And I know TC,
No,
I know you're
I
going
love Tell,
to
man.
throw more on.
I love Tell.
So
I'm not saying he's I'm not saying he's the every week out and out starter, but I think the dude can contribute.
I think Tell's your second left wing and your second striker, like this season.
I was going to say the way that I agree with you, Scotty. I think the way that De Zerbi plays with the nine, that's why a guy like Kruby is going to work really well for him, because he drops deep and then he busts his ass and get into the box to get on the end of stuff. And I think that's kind of that, like what we would consider in the old 4-4-2, like that second striker role is something that I think Matthias Tell, we've said on this pod, that guy can do that role and do it well.
Yeah, agreed.
So if we are able to sign a left wing that actually has the ability to beat a man on the dribble and contribute meaningful crosses into the box on a regular basis, and we ship Richarlison and we're running Tell and Kruby as our nine combo, and Solanke, whatever, like you can rotate him there as well for some minutes if you like. Like, I love that. And the only reason why is because I think that that's the only thing that we're really properly going to get out of Matthias Tell. And the reason why is because his biggest downfall is his decision making from the left wing position. And the reason for that is because he's a natural striker. Like, that's the position he grew up playing. He has that finishing instinct. And I love that for him. He just needs to be in better finishing positions. Well, if he can arrive in the box on time and learn that type of finishing technique, buddy, there's opportunity there. It's just that's not been his strong suit to this point in time. I
also don't think it's something that can't be learned either.
No, and he'll get minutes on the left wing as well, because we need bodies and he can do things over there. But it's not. I don't know. Do you want him there instead of Mikey Moore developing behind Savinho? I don't know.
Dude, the problem again though is that with Tell, like, if you look at the Premier League and we talk about a true number nine, like the Premier League is so physical. I'm sitting here thinking of nines that I've actually seen play as true nines and just poach in the box and clean up in the box. And it's Holland and it's Kane, and I can't think of anyone else. Like, I really can't.
Ferguson under De Zerbi at Brighton.
Okay. I mean, yeah, but like not to the level where you're like, that guy can fix all our problems at the nine, no?
Oh, no, it was 1 year and De Zerbi went to Marseille and Ferguson fell the fuck off. So
yeah, maybe.
But that was the last time that I could think
storm.
of like a proper nine doing shit like that.
Yeah, but my point is like, I just don't think we can expect that from anyone that's not a world-class striker anymore. Like, probably Lewandowski could have done it in his prime. Kun Aguero did it, but like, if it all goes back to me saying like we're gonna have to have exactly what Todd's talking about. Like Krupi, I didn't watch Krupi last year. Like I wasn't sitting down to like get all hyped up about Bournemouth, right? I don't want to pretend that I was, but my understanding is that he played as like a second striker for Bournemouth, right? Where he not on the depth chart, but I mean in a system like Todd's talking about, where you're like the second striker that makes the late runs and drops deep and gets involved in the buildup and stuff. So we're gonna have to have that because the other option, a true number 9 poacher, doesn't really exist outside of Kane and Holland in the game right now. So
Well,
and
the
that's where your
one
wings become
piece.
so important.
Wait, exactly. That's the one piece. The one reason why I would like to take a punt on like a Blahovic is because he is that giant
He is that
statue
profile.
number 9. Yeah,
Yeah.
bounce the ball off of him like you would a folding chair and have it go in the goal. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah,
kind of
he is
striker
that
he is.
profile.
Now his hold up play is not what we're looking for, but it's better than Richarlison's, whose hold up play is literally that of a folding chair. So I don't think that we can do much worse than what we've got now. The Dom Solanke piece is interesting. And I'll tell you why. We haven't recouped our investment on Don Solanke yet, and I'm not saying that we actually ever will, but I'm just saying from a way that it's spread over the course of the length of the contract and how it hits our books. Like we haven't the attrition is still negative for us right now from a Dom Solanke standpoint. So the one piece that
Yeah.
I'll probably want to move on is Richarlison from a financial perspective, which means we're going to have to figure out how to get a song out of Dominic Solanke. I don't know what you suggest, Andrew, but
I
he's got to
suggest
give us
putting better.
something.
I suggest putting better players around him, which I think is what the club is trying to do. If that true striker body is not out there, which Scott, to your point, I agree that the game is changing. There aren't as many just out and out number 9s in the game to this point. You could try and develop them, but the game is changing in a way that makes that position not less important, but just less prevalent. And if that's the case, then fair enough. Figure out a different way. So surround the players you do have with even better players and get as you say, TC, get a tune out of them. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And if I'm not going to be as drastic as you guys, only because I think there's a chance that this team does go into the year with both Richarlison and Solanke as the only true number 9s. And I'm not going to freak out about that, because not only because there will still be a few more weeks within the window, but also I think you can float with those guys at least, as long as you have the other bodies around. And I'm not talking about no more additions. I'm saying you need to add still. But if they don't add another true number 9, that's the bed they've lied in.
Well, so here's my issue with that, is that the guy that we're looking at is Savinho, and the other guy we have on the plan for the other side is Kudus. And both of those guys do incredible things, but scoring goals is not their primary function. And so if your assertion is that Dominic Solanke can go back to scoring 19 goals like he did at Bournemouth for Tottenham Hotspur, if we put Savinho on his left, like I'm all here for your optimism, but I can't for the life of me say to you that if we go in with Solanke and Richarlison, that we're going to be okay or talking about having a meaningful season in any way, simply because I know who those players are, because I have enough of a sample size to recognize what they bring to the table. And it's good enough if good enough is getting 17th 2 years on the bounce. If good enough is having Richarlison be your leading scorer with 10 league goals.
You just told me, though, that Kudus and Savinho are not there to score goals. So if they're not going to be playing there to score goals, what are they going to be doing? Assisting on goals
for a proper striker.
Okay, but
what I'm saying to
Dom
you
Solanke
is
like we're not going to sit here and disrespect these players in the sense that he's not a proper striker. He may not be Harry Kane, but Dom Solanke's still a Premier League striker. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
I mean, yes, he plays in the Premier League. But he scored 3 fucking goals last year, Andrew.
He was also hurt, and we also sucked. Like, come on, dude, we were awful.
Well, no, listen, I'm not trying. I'm not the only distinction that I'm trying to make here is in please forgive me if you feel as though I'm painting with a broad brush. But the only distinction I'm trying to make here is that Dominic Solanke had one good year at Bournemouth, and we signed him on the back of that for a club record fee. And he's never again, never before that year, and never since come remotely close to producing at that level. And then when you go back and you actually look at the goals from that season, and you see that the majority of them were fucking tap-ins, and you recognize the reason why we bought Dom Solanke in the first place is because we had Ange, and Ange was just saying, get in the box and knock in these tap-ins that I'm having all the crosses come in for. Like, that's why we bought him. So now we've got this holdover striker that has a very specific skill set, and we're not playing a game that's going to lead to getting a song out of that specific skill set. Like,
everything you're telling me, though, is that we're bringing in wingers and are going to have the wingers to be able to facilitate. So why can't he score a bunch more tap-ins?
I hope
we're going to be playing more Ange ball than Frank ball, right? Like, this is this Deserby ball is going to Deserby's ball is going to be a little bit more attacking, right?
Like, if those things are two polar opposites of the scale, Andrew, yes.
That's what I'm saying, though.
My thing is that with Richarlison, like, that guy only scores with his head meaningfully, or unless there's a volley. And Solanke is not great with his head, but will score your tap-ins at the back post.
So here's what I would say to that.
The issue that I have is that the other thing that Zerbi asks for from his strikers is solid hold-up play. Richarlison doesn't give that to us. Solanke does, but then it essentially takes him out of the play for the foreseeable future. So then you have to rely on your wings to finish those chances. And Savinho and Kudus, if Savinho is who we get, as it stands right now, Matthias Tell and Kudus are not lethal enough, are not reliable enough in those chances for me to feel comfortable about our league position if I'm relying on Dom Solanke and Richarlison. And I can't be the only one who feels that way.
I don't think you are, but I will also remind everyone they're not building an all-star team here. Like, they're building the team that they can build, and you're not going to have the perfect player in every single position. I think that if you're improving on the wings, that helps whoever the striker is. I'm not saying the striker can be a bum, but I'm also not saying that Dom Solanke and Richarlison are bums. I think they're less than what we would want, but would be capable if there are better players around them and if there is health, which is obviously always the biggest thing. I want to move on to Mickey Van de Ven quotes because, I mean, we've both intentionally and unintentionally mentioned Thomas Frank's name multiple times during this podcast, and I think Mickey Van de Ven mentioned Thomas Frank's name without mentioning Thomas Frank's name, which was very interesting. He was quoted by Football.London talking about kind of the summer signings that were accomplished this season. He said there were some really good signings, unbelievable players that can bring a lot to our team. He then also added this, talking about the fact that Tottenham may be a little bit more enjoyable this season than last. He said, I know that for sure. It's going to be different compared to the former manager we had last season. It's going to be more with the ball, more playing football. I think it's going to be more enjoyable for people to watch playing offensive football. Go Mickey is all I have to say to that. Like, Mickey Van de Ven obviously has Thomas Frank's head on a stake at his home. Like, was quite obviously not a fan of playing that more defensive, confined football. And obviously we know that about Mickey Van de Ven because every time he touches the football, he wants to go forward with it and has done a number of times. So I thought that was really interesting. The other part of this piece that Ali Gold wrote up was talking about how the club's priorities this summer were to do two things. They were to, outside of the transfer market, obviously, but re-sign Pedro Porro and re-sign Mickey Van de Ven. They've obviously already re-signed Pedro Porro. The next step would be getting a deal with Mickey Van de Ven done, and the offer has been made, and it sounds like there could be something on the horizon there, which I would obviously be a big fan of because I love Mickey Van de Ven, and I think he is the center back to build this defense around.
100%, man. I mean, it's interesting though, like, Part of me still thinks that Mickey Van de Ven would be maybe our best left back, but I don't want to like start us down that conversation. I look at our back line. It's very interesting. Like, I'm thinking about this larger conversation as you're talking about this, right? Because let's say hypothetically our preferred back line is Poro, Van Hecke, Van de Ven, and we'll say Udogi. I might even say Spence, right? But we'll say Udogi in this
Andy
exercise.
Robertson, you guys are wild.
I mean, honestly, yes, for sure, Andy Robertson. We have depth, which is pretty interesting, right? Um, we'll see what happens with Spence, but we'll say Udogi for the sake of the exercise, and then we look at a midfield of Fernandes and Tonali and probably Gallagher until Madison gets back, right? Who knows? And then if we sign Savino, we'll have Kudus back. Striker, we already had that conversation. I won't start it back up again, right? But my point is, I think that I think our team is actually going to be pretty talented. I look back at the last 2 years, and I think midfield is what really let us down, right? And I think having a guy like Mickey Van de Ven to lead that team, like I don't know, I don't know if he wears the armband, right? But just to be that vocal leader, which he's really showing himself to want to be, right? I think just bodes really well for us. So if the priorities are getting Poro done, which clearly after the World Cup we just saw from him, no one can argue that that was a huge priority, right? And then getting Mickey Van de Ven done, if those are the two priorities for this club outside of incomings, right? Then I think we're setting ourselves up for what could be a really cool season. They were talking about Spurs a lot this morning on Morning Footy, and it's interesting to see Spurs discussed so much because all I've heard for the past 2 years is how awful we are, right? And now we're talked about in such a positive light again, and it's probably speaks to just the fickle nature of the game that a good transfer window just makes people want to talk about you positively, right? But they're Chris Whittingham, who I respect a ton, and he's like super unbiased and just he calls a lot of Serie A, a lot of Champions League, right? A lot of MLS, but the panel was talking about Spurs, and he came out and said, honestly, I really think Spurs, with what they're shaping up to become, could and should be making a run at qualifying for Champions League. And I'm not saying we're going to, right? That's not the point of this conversation. But to hear somebody like that come out and Nico Cantor was saying Europa League is probably where they could finish, right? But which is still sounded pretty palatable to me, right? But when Chris Whittingham said that, I really started to think about the squad, and when I see leaders like Van de Ven, like we're talking about, like Pedro Porro, like we're talking about, and then the midfield really beefing up, I think that something really special is coming together under De Zerbi, and it's exciting. So all that rant to say, I'm really happy that we're seeing Mickey Van de Ven coming out and saying these things and then kind of cementing himself as a leader, because we're going to need somebody like that if we're going to do what people like Chris Whittingham were talking about Spurs doing this season.
TC, did you like feed Van de Ven any of those lines about Frank? Because I know like you probably share similar thoughts, right?
To say the least, sir. To say the least, I loathe that man's presence in football, and am glad that he was found out for the fraud that he actually is. I think Van de Ven will absolutely sign that contract here very soon. Van Hecke came out and said that Mickey Van de Ven was a big part of the reason why he came to Tottenham. Um, Spurs love having countrymen as center backs. And I think that this is our next great duo with Van de Ven and Van Hecke. Um, Mate, I can't tell you how much getting back to playing football that aligns with the fabric of this club means to me.
Yep.
I was having a conversation this weekend, and the gist of it was you're never going to fit in where you don't belong. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how you contort yourself or change, how you talk or how you walk or how you play. If it's not the way that it's supposed to be, if it doesn't align with who you are, it's never going to work. Tottenham are meant to play attacking front foot football that makes our fans proud to see the ball not only go in the back of the net, but to talk about how it got there. And I was extremely skeptical of De Zerbi when he came in, and I remain cautiously optimistic. But I feel like somewhere between when he took this job and when he was standing on the pitch watching the South Stand after on the last day of the season, and we stayed up and were singing. Roberto De Zerbi kind of came to terms with the fact that this is his shot. Whatever that means to you at home listening to this, we only get a few in this world. And Roberto De Zerbi recognizes that of all of the places that he's been, in all of the clubs that he's managed, in all the situations in which he's found himself, this is the one where if he gets it right, can write his legacy forever. And I think in the way that he's speaking, in the way that his team is speaking, in the way that the club is moving in the transfer window, everybody recognizes this kind of precipice that we're on right now. And we are literally, Andrew, a goal scorer and a proper facilitator away from establishing Tottenham as the type of club we've all known that we should be for the last decade.
I think there's no doubt about it. And I think
man.
the biggest difference between last year and this year is going to be something that you brought up, Scott. It's the midfield, but even more specifically, it's the ability to pass. And TC, you said it, like, it's not about the ball going in the back of the net. It's about what led to it getting there. And the thing that Tottenham have not been able to do now for a couple seasons is pass the football properly. They've had maybe two guys who can really pass the ball in Romero and Porro. And it's not great that those have been, your right-sided defenders. Like, you'd want a little bit more passing, and they now have added that and are going to continue to add that. And I think that's what makes this really exciting going forward. Before we get out of here, guys, I do want to mention that Spurs Women have done it again. They've once again broken their transfer record. They signed 22-year-old Alice Sambath, the French right back from Lyon, last week. Just another killer deal. They're bringing in players with so much experience in not just in winning, but winning in Europe. This is a 5-time French league winner, a Champions League winner, the sixth signing of this window. And I am starting to get really, like, not only is the men's signings amping me up, but what this women's roster is starting to transform into very slowly, and there's still work to be done there as well. Like, I'll be honest, there are a few players that are still on this roster that I don't think will be on the roster by the end of the transfer window, but I do think that what they've brought in is really exciting. We're going to learn this week the WSL fixtures. Those will be out on Thursday. Opening weekend of the season is just over a month away. September 4th through 6th is the opening window of the WSL. And these signings, Scott, have me super amped. And they're bringing in they're bringing in obvious winners, but obviously that experience factor, and you're trying to get to Champions League, that is all that matters right now.
She went to the last Women's Euros too, with France, and she wasn't.
Yeah,
she wasn't not
16
young.
16 international
right?
caps.
Yeah, so it's interesting because reputable sites list her as a center back first, who can also play right back, and so I can't. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I watched a ton of Lyon matches. I did watch them in the Champions League last year, but I certainly wasn't watching them beyond that. But is there a world where she pairs with Koga? Maybe. We just signed Blackstead as well, who I think is a very fun right back. So either way, it's depth, right? So if she starts at center back, great. If she starts at right back, great. But she's definitely coming to play, without a doubt. And yeah, like you said, I think it's easy to get caught up in everything that's happening on the men's side, but the women are equally, if not more so, making waves across Europe. And credit to the folks running the show for that as well. I think we've been quick to criticize individuals who run the club right now, but they're proving to us this summer that they mean business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting times on the women's side of things. I think that the way that they've kind of overhauled the fringes of this team has been impressive. It's just quietly developing a strong base and depth across the board. So Yeah, Champions League places look very much on the menu for the Spurs women this year.
Yeah, I think it's a lofty goal, but one that you have to set for yourself almost. Like you can't.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to try for it, and I certainly think that it's like you said, it's on the menu, and I'm ready to eat. That is going to do it for this edition of the Tottenham Depot. We ran a little long. We're going to leave it there. Keep an eye out next week. We're going to be a little hit or miss. Your boy's going to be having a little summer vacation, so we'll be hit or miss next week, but keep an eye out on the feed. We will certainly be putting something out. Be sure to check out our episodes on the YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, and you can leave us a rating and review as well on your podcast app of choice. Follow Todd at TC_Kasho. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird. You can follow me at A. Setka. Most importantly, follow us at Tottenham Depot on all the socials. Till next time, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.